those of you who follow Brutus, the Invincible, I think that's what he's calling himself now. Anyway, he has a YouTube channel, and I appeared on it on Sunday, from 7 to 11. Not that anybody noticed. I think there was one disobliging comment about why he had me on. I think I made a few points about usury and simple and compound interest, but because it's such a long stream, I wonder how much of it people listened, even though I time-stamped it. I try to make the most of my opportunities, but even if I make my points, who knows if anybody even listened? And in these long streams, people don't tend to listen all the way to the end, and perhaps truly less is more. Brevity is all in a world of ADHD sufferers. So I don't think anybody noticed, but for a lot of my appearances on other people's streams have been, sort of, well, perhaps even I think that, momentous or something, and then nobody noticed, nobody cared. Life goes on, not much has changed. And in any case, I have been disabled from posting in the chat yet again. So what is it about these men who cannot deal with people having a different view? As you know, I don't really bother with the chat. I let it go. I let people have fun in my chat. And I don't bother with mods. I know some people sell their wrenches as a way of currying favor with certain people by modding them. But I really can't be bothered with all that nonsense. So anyway, Brutus and Rob were having an argument about how things should be and how things are. I remember having just such an argument with my mother, and obviously we were talking at cross purposes because, in fact, we didn't even agree with we didn't even disagree because one of us was talking about how things are, and the other is talking about how things should be, and there is actually no ground of disagreement, but because of this appearance of non-agreement, the exchange got heated. And this discussion with Brutus started with some woman who sang a silly song to some German dictator and became famous, and now is lost her YouTube account and is no longer belle of the ball. And then Rob said that she looked a bit weird, and that seemed to trigger Brutus. Not that I'm saying this has anything to do with looks, because most people don't really show their faces, and if you don't appear often on TV, you're not really there to annoy anyone with your silly haircut or your unprepossessing appearance. But this is a trouble with, drunken, emotional men. And I'm saying, Rob was reasonably sober at the time, but Brutus got a bit emotional. I posted a few things. I don't think it was that offensive, but since they're all removed, who knows? So the thing is, if we're going to be defending our principles and our beliefs, whatever they are, it should be, well, come at me, mate. I'm not afraid of you, and I will defend my beliefs because I think I will win. And deleting comments in the chat disabling certain people from posting is a sign of weakness and vulnerability and needing protection, because otherwise your feeling wheelings will be hurt, or the feeling wheelings of your moronic subscribers and viewers might be hurt. So I don't even know which comments he has or hasn't deleted. So I thought the conversation went well. I think I behaved myself. I wasn't kicked off, and everybody said goodbye to each other nicely on the Anglo Gang 50, and then I said a few things about theology, and this triggered Brutus, who said, "Don't talk to me anymore." And I said, "Well, this is how it's the last frontier of political discourse. I am, after all, proposing Sharia, and there will be a lot of people who say it's stupid, and obviously we're going to have an argument about it, right? That's how it should be." And I've noticed that there are a lot of so-called political activists who are not up to having a one-to-one with me on the subject. And that's why, I'm always marginalized or ignored, or if I'm not ignored, they complain that I take over the stream. And it's like, well, it's not like I even interrupt the conversation and say, you guys stop talking about the things you're talking about and listen to me, and I want to talk about this other thing. I do make a point of, responding to whatever is being said, the topic of the moment. And then when Brutus had had enough, because he's always so emotional, right? The one thing good about him is that, he's obviously sincere, but he's emotional, and that's why we think he's sincere, because he's so emotional. And he doesn't seem to understand that you do kind of have to play the game. Am I playing the game? Well, I think I am. Maybe I'm playing it wrong, but sometimes you have to stick to your guns, and sometimes you have to yield. And I like to think I have done enough of it to make my branding clear, and what is non-negotiable to me. So Trump got into power by saying the same thing again and again and again, until everyone believed he meant what he said. And even now, it's controversial. He still has supporters. Those of us who supported him, and I don't mind admitting that I supported him from the beginning. And now we discover, to our dismay, that he's doing the neocon war thing even more, with more of it in a shorter period of time. And this, of course, makes everyone nervous, Americans included, particularly the MAGA people who thought, hey, we thought this was what we voted you to do, Trump, to stop those neocon wars, and you're breaking that promise. But then he could say that MAGA means exactly what I mean for it to mean. And I didn't say I would have no more neocon wars. I would have successful neocon wars, and we've already successfully invaded Venezuela, and we're, gonna get rid of the theocracy in Iran. Who knows? But there are people who still cling to hope and think, Trump is being badly advised, and whatever. But it is America where all of the world should be looking towards. And what Brutus doesn't understand is that he thinks Britain has an independent foreign policy. And that's why I never talk to Europeans. I certainly don't talk to Britons who are really so parochial and low IQ. Obviously, America has a bigger pool of talent because, well, they're a bigger country. They have more people, and some of them might just be, smart enough to have a rational conversation about stuff. And I have decided that it is white, middle-class Christian Americans who are the most important demographic, as far as I am concerned, because if anything's going to happen, it will be their demographic who may or may not decide to do what is necessary to be done. Same thing, you decide on what you want and what your principles are and which ones are non-negotiable, and stick to them until you believe them or people believe that you believe in them. And my proposal is not the dismantling of the West, but the reformation of the American hegemon. So obviously, if you already have a global empire, you want it to operate more efficiently with less opposition, both internal and external. And ideally, you want people to think you are the good guy, capable of reform, knowing where you've gone wrong and not being afraid to say sorry and take your correction. And I think I have the very idea. And I would just like to be able to answer difficult questions like, hey, how are you going to do it? You're just one woman. I would like questions like that, not, oh, it's never going to happen. Who are you to tell us what to do? I would have thought with this glut and overflow of graduates, you might find one or two of them prepared to engage with ideas in theory. But there appears to be none of it. No one, middle class and British, is prepared to engage. I know they're being kind of corralled into supporting Christian nationalism, but it's a trap. It's a trap. And I've done more than one video to say that it's a trap to trick Americans into giving up their First Amendment, because they would be, well, most of them, let's be honest, most of them hate Jews, hate non-whites, and hate Muslims, and they would just be stupid enough to give up their First Amendment and pretend to worship Jesus and agree to a Christian amendment and give up their First Amendment rights. They might just be stupid, moronic, and hate-filled enough to do that. So this is a danger. And we know that the powers that be are promoting it because Sam Harris and Doug Wilson are kind of doing a Claire and Vincent thing, this handcart thing, because it's more entertaining. I'm promoting the restoration of the patriarchy, and Vincent, when he will speak to me again, will be finding ways of not using patriarchy as the official and government-supported way of rearing the next generation. And I've been talking to him, precisely because, it's more entertaining than me monologuing on my own. And people find debates more entertaining. It has also come to my notice that the people who command a high viewership are, well, panderers, right? They just don't want anybody not liking their videos, not sharing, not subscribing, and this is why they give them more slop about why, oh why, oh why is this happening? It's the Jews. What can we do about the Jews? And so on and so forth. But within certain parameters, obviously, certain words are not going to be used, which will take you, onto the wrong side of the track, so to speak. So only educated people or people who are not social retards can negotiate this tightrope, really. And to be fair to Millennial Wodes, he's middle class. He, has some sense of what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And he should know, having got on the wrong side of things and had his YouTube channel deleted. But let us be clear about who we are. White people, there's more than one kind of white people, obviously. And I'm sure you'd find it offensive if anyone were to say white people this and white people that, and you don't share this description. You don't fit this description of white people. Like, white people are Zionists, white people are American imperialists, though many of them are, but many of them too are dismayed by this turn of events of Trump starting so many wars, in the process of starting so many wars. And Trump has also had a lot of non-American support. So the best thing that can be done is a kind of, well, it needs better PR, right? And the current PR of Nick Fuentes saying, yeah, we're going to take just what we want, and you're going to have to like it or lump it. We don't care what you think. We do it to you because we can. So that's obviously not very diplomatic and not likely to help you make friends or encourage and influence people. And pride always comes before a fall. And I'm very pleased to see that Yawn God. I was talking about giving him about wrenching certain people, and I will give him a wrench because he's one of the most thoughtful trolls. Well, he's not completely a troll. Sometimes he does talk a lot of sense, and he's been kind enough to grace my videos, my live chat, with his comments. And the thing is, yes, status, people will kill each other over status. Well, animals do too. So status is something that can be sold. Yeah, it can be sold. And this is what I will be doing to, be a more effective political activist. So my whole modus operandi, obviously I have no money to bribe anyone, but status is what people want. They want, if they're in a group, or they feel that they want to be in a group, and you offer them a bit of status, they're kind of more friendly towards you, and they have more loyalty if they've seen to be benefiting in some way from association with you. And And talking about status, Brutus still doesn't understand, and neither do his moronic viewers understand that being racist is just low status, right? It's low status in religion. Muslims are not supposed to be racist. Christians are not supposed to be racist. Even Jews are not supposed to be racist because they are obliged to accept converts. I think Zoroastrians are not supposed to accept converts, and that's why they never got anywhere, and they don't have any divine revelation either, which is another reason why they didn't get anywhere. And so it's important for us to understand theology. And I did boast to Brutus that I am the most knowledgeable theologian in the world, and then he said, "Well, don't are you mad? And don't talk to me." And so he can't seem to accept that religion is politics, politics is religion, and if that is the case, then we choose the best religion for our group. It's as simple as that. And Brutus, because he wasted his working years, in an ashram in India, missed out on the career ladder, and is now working in a factory, hating everyone. And that's because he finds himself low status and ignored. Yes, I can understand, being angry and bitter, but let's just accept that maybe we have done something to be despised and ignored and ostracized from. I like to think I understand it. Now, Rob says I'm annoying in the chat. It's like, yeah, when I'm talking to you, I want you to know that it is me. I am talking to you, and I will stop when I've finished what I want to say about, what you just said. And I think it's important, brand recognition and everything. And Rob, because he's permanently drunk, either does not understand because he's drunk, or does understand and then forgets because he's a drunkard. And when you are forever shooting yourself in the foot and putting your foot in your mouth, then you're not going to prosper. And sadly, it would appear that white men are being represented by people like Brutus and Rob. So in my last stream, I was basically arguing about things that he already agreed with me about, but he just wanted to, get to the point again in a long-winded way. And of course, he's autistic, and then he says revealing things like autism is my superpower, or is it drunkenness? So he's drunk and autistic, and he wonders why he's, not getting the respect that he wants. And one of the topics that came up between Brutus and Rob is who's going to win the argument in a televised debate between Tommy Robinson and Steve Lords. I mean, look at Steve Lords. He was recently featured on the Andrew Gold channel. Andrew Gold is a Jew, and he's a good-looking one, and he went to, a Russell Group University, and he has very high production values on his channel, and this means that he is being promoted. He's not doing it on his own. He's got a production team. Why did they choose him? It's because he's got all the things that might attract women. So, let's face it, the men who are allowed to operate have to have an element of fuckability, right? And if you're a lower class ugly git like Steve Laws, you're not going to get anywhere. And he is charmless, angry, hate-filled, and ugly. Have I said that before? But anyway, Tommy Robinson, who's a Zionist, so at least he has the backing of the government, will always seem more attractive to women. Well, even if it's a woman who has no idea about politics, they will just prefer the look of Tommy Robinson to the look of Steve Laws, and this was what I was trying to impress on them. And the reason why, in my view, they are promoting Steve Laws and interviewing him on Andrew Goat instead of me is because they're going to be setting him up to knock him down. And they will have a televised debate, probably, and Steve Laws will just come across as lower class, ugly and repellent to women, and he'll lose. And then the powers that be will say, we gave them a fair crack of the whip, and he lost. So, fuck off, ethno-nationalists. You've lost. If that's the best you can find, it's over for you. And talking about, ugly ethno-nationalists, the handsome ones, there's Richard Spencer, right? There's Richard Spencer, but then he has no principles, and now he's, going with the flow. Yes, I support neocon wars. I did support the Democrats when Trump had the election stolen from him, but now I don't even know what he's saying. It doesn't matter, because nobody respects Richard Spencer because he has no principles. And he is infamous for having no principles. But maybe he's considered high status because he has children. Occasionally he talks about them. Occasionally they come into shot when they climb on his chair when he's dreaming. So at least he's a dad, unlike others I could mention. So yes, even in our anti-natalist society, the fact that you managed to become a father, who are still, and with children who are still living under your roof, you get a higher status than if you're an incel. And this is traditionally how society operated. So that once upon a time, well, I think it's still the case in America, though America did have a bachelor president, and he was said to rob something Buchanan anyway. I think. Let me just. I can never remember the name of the bachelor American president. But he was said to be terrible, and so was Arthur Balfour, a bachelor, and Ted Heath. And there should be a rule. James Buchanan, a president from 1857 to 1861. Because if you're a bachelor or an old maid, yes, there have been old maid presidents, right? In Taiwan, it's like there are signs. It's like if you get some spinster lady being head of your nation, whatever its race, you're not doing well. So may I point out to you men that the EU is headed by two warmongering women, Kaya Kallas and Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, just accept your low status. And Americans are led by an alpha male leader, Trump. And I guess Europeans will just have to keep on sucking it up. They have no army, they have no navy. They're lucky, the Danes are lucky that Trump is offering to pay them anything for Greenland. As for Canada, well, I guess it could be done by referendum, and then if the Canadians say, well, we'd rather be American than British, then I think Trump can get away with not paying Britain anything. So geopolitics is all important, and all these narrow-minded, small-minded ethno-nationalists, they don't get geopolitics. They're happy to blame everything on Jews, and when you try to discuss theology with them, because it's the only narrative that will beat the official government narrative, they threaten to disengage with you, as Brutus did. Right? It's pathetic, but there we are. I might have triggered Brutus. I think I did post in his chat that SJJ did say more than once in my last stream. Was it my last stream? No, I think the last two streams I had with him, he did say that he accepted me as the thought leader of the dissident right. I'm the one with all the ideas. I don't know what other ideas other people have. I mean, what you have is, what, Curtis Yarvin? Are you going to take him seriously? He wants to restore the monarchy. You have to be a total, utter imbecile to go for that. I really can't think of anyone else with a solution. Oh yes, there's E. Michael Jones, and I did ask him whether Catholicism could even be considered Christian nationalism, because Catholicism is supranational, right? Because once upon a time in Europe, all the kingdoms of Europe submitted to the Pope. And okay, so we can imagine. So the hypothetical situation I'm asking you to imagine is, what if the CIA just miraculously managed to make sure that every pope from now on is an American pope? Non-American Catholics would get suspicious, and even if they allowed the popes of the future to be non-American, people would be able to tell that in reality, the Vatican submits to the liberal order. And we already know this. We knew this before Trump. So if you listen to Reason and Theology, Michael Lofton, well, he's this Catholic, and he's basically, well, I guess a new Michael Voris, except that he was never gay, and he has children. He's a married father, and every day he's saying, I can't believe this is happening. This is what, this is the latest thing coming from the Vatican. And I think eventually the penny will drop, that the only way to get anything done is to change the law. And I know E. Michael Jones wants to form a Catholic Muslim alliance. How I just don't see how it's going to work, because Catholicism has no power, because it submits to the liberal order. And even as we speak, a lot of Muslims are salami slicing their principles away. But fortunately, with the Quran in existence, we can always go back to what the Quran said and what Muslims actually do, and know that the deep chasm between what Islam is in theory and what Muslims are like in practice. And I've already identified the problem. The reason why things have not gone well for Muslims is the problem of absolute monarchy. And Christians of all people, or Westerners of all people, should know that the last 250 years of Western history has been Westerners rejecting the institution of absolute monarchy, and by extension rejecting Christianity, which is the institution, well, the church is the institution that support that defends the divine right of kings. So it's all linked, and that's why over over the last 100 years, we have had three political theories, as Dugin was saying. The first political theory that rejected Christianity was liberalism, and then liberalism was imposed on the Weimar Republic, and the Germans didn't like it and decided to remove that with nationalism in Russia. They tried representative democracy with their Duma and social democracy and stuff, and that didn't work. And that was replaced by Marxist Leninism. So if you understand Western political theory and Western political thought, and even the Hegelian dialectic, you'll understand why we are now where we are. Now, liberalism is in the 21st century. Liberalism is nothing more than sexual liberation from the rules of marriage and good parenting, and it was a logical inevitability. If you value liberty for its own sake, it will eventually lead to, well, why do we have to marry before we have children? Who have we harmed by having sex with people not our spouse? So now we know that in order for our group to remain in existence, we have to engage in sexual reproduction after choosing a suitable spouse who will be good to us and to our children, so that we may raise children who are a credit to us. And that's the main rule. That is universal to humanity, or any honest, reasonable, and moral person. They would have to acknowledge that if they wanted their group to remain in existence, the current generation have to produce the next generation and parent them properly, or they will be delinquent, criminal, not productive citizens. And that's the whole purpose of the institutions of marriage and the family, supported by all the 5 world religions. That's what religion is for, to support marriage. And obviously the better ones do more than just support marriage. They would try to impose a degree of justice and fairness, and I'm saying the Quran is the best foundation for this idea of being fair enough. Obviously, the Old Testament is a bit too harsh, even for Jews, which is why they couldn't keep it up, right? They couldn't keep it up. And therefore, in order to even say they control Israel, they have to submit to the global hegemon that is America, because without America, their goose would be pretty much cooked. So they're only there serving the interests of American imperialism. They're not there on their own account. They don't even know who they are. Currently, Israel is run under the principles of Christian Zionism, and anyone who has investigated the matter will know that Christian missionaries go to Israel and shout at Jews, telling them to convert to Christianity, because the whole foundational belief of Christian Zionism is first, to get the Messiah to come, you gather all the Jews and send them to Israel, and then you convert them to Christianity, and then Jesus will make a second coming. That is basically their belief. I know the Jews don't quite understand this, but that's what it is, right? So it's actually impossible for Jews to even have a Torah theocracy, because the ultra-Orthodox Jews would know that the secular Jews would not be standing for that for even a second. And it's the secular Jews who do all the work, the IDF, the hospitals, the engineers and army, etc. So they don't even ask for it because they know it's not possible. So for Jews to even stay in Israel, they have to rely on a powerful empire. Who's to say they might not, if America declines, if America says goodbye to Europe, then it will say goodbye to Israel. They can't, from what I can tell, from what Trump is doing, he is downsizing the American empire and making it more manageable. So instead of, being everywhere, all over the world, he's saying, well, let's just control the energy supplies from the Arctic to the Antarctic and have Monroe Doctrine version 2. And yes, I can see that would make sense. But this means Europeans and the rest of the world will have to think of what they're going to do. And this is really what I would like to discuss, not the, okay, finally, before I leave the subject, it's just stupid to say ethno-nationalism is better than civic nationalism. It's an empty debate. The whole point of it is that if everybody is complaining about immigration, then obviously you have to agree on some policy about limiting immigration. And it doesn't matter whether you're civic or ethno-nationalist, you have to agree on that. So, what the hell point is there either of them saying that they're morally superior to the other? It's just a preference. And if we can agree on the policies and the laws that are needed to reduce immigration or reduce the labor shortage, then let's do it, instead of accusing each other of being racist or Nazi or whatever. But, these moronic, imbecilic ethno-nationalists who we know are, basically knuckle-dragging apes who go with their emotions. They can't control their emotions. They just want to be able to assert their status and be rude about other groups, and even when it's not necessary. So that is really and then they get their, YouTube accounts deleted, and then they blame the Jews, and there is this vicious cycle. And the problem with these atheists is that they have to blame the Jews. If you're atheist, then Jews obviously exist. Jews are obviously privileged over Gentiles, even in Western countries, because of the sanctity of Israel, because it's so useful to the global hegemon in having this, status symbol colony, saying we run Israel, we run the Holy Land, we protect the Jews, and you better listen to us because we're so good and we're so powerful, and that oh yes, and of course Israel is a testing ground for the latest air defense systems, and the latest weaponry. You can try out your latest weapons in the Middle East, in the Holy Land. It's useful for that. And in the meantime, people think that Jews are in some way holy. No, I think they're just the lab rats of the military-industrial complex. But who am I to say, huh? So thank you, Jon God, for saying implementing Sharia would be easy. Yes, it would be a piece of cake. Because, really, most people are cattle. They don't trust themselves to even entertain an idea, let alone argue about it. So if you just tell them this is how it's going to be from now on, we're going to tell you how it is. We're going to tell you what the rules are and how you could prosper if you follow them. We're going to support the institutions of marriage and the family, and you better make yourself marriageable, or you'll be, you know, some low status incel who will be ignored, marginalized, ostracized, and nobody will listen. Nobody will care what you think because you're this low status incel that no woman will look at. Yes, Alphabet Cat. It is partly about Brutus. He did say he was going to discontinue Anglo Gang, which I think is a good move. I mean, I was there. I behaved myself. But it's really a waste of time, right? You know, unless you're going to, make clips from it. When some guest makes a proper point. A lot of the occasional truth and wisdom will be entirely lost. And therefore, I agree with Brutus that he should be doing interviews. So at least, these interviews will be about a topic or a person. I don't know if he's going to interview me, but it's still the right way to go for him. Yes, YouTube is now just incredibly censorious. I think they even limit the number of comments I can make on people's streams. Yes, so we're all here because we're not happy about something, and it makes us feel better when we can express our grievances, and some people might agree with us, and even if they don't agree with us, it makes us feel better that we are in some way defending our principles and beliefs. Yes, I don't want to mess around. Let us just, go as fast as we can to solve the problem, and this means online anyway, that we say what we mean and stop beating about the bush. He won't be coming back to the UK. I didn't even know he'd left the UK, so let me look that up. I mean, a lot of people will be giving up on the UK simply because Europe is perceived as declining and not really viable on its own, and because its leaders haven't really decided what position they want to take on geopolitics, right? I mean, the sensible thing would be for Western Europe to be friends with Russia and enjoy cheap energy. And I think it's in theory possible that we would just have to we would just have to say out sorry to Russia, sorry for being so obstructive and rejecting representative democracy as a way of governing European nations. I think the Americans should give it up too. That's why I keep banging on about what Washington said about political parties, because they're wasting their time and creating unnecessary divisions. And we already know that neither of the parties are principled. I tried to point out to Mark Parker, like, look, the Democrats were the party of the KKK, and now they're the party of BLM. So obviously they haven't got any principles. So let's just ban every other party other than the only party allowed in the country which has the principle of governing in the national interest. And then we can argue about what is or isn't in the national interest. But once we get that, and nationalists should agree, they should at least agree that nationalism is governing government in the national interest. I'm sure I suggested that to Brutus, but that drew a blank. At times I think he's interested in ideas, but, maybe he's just too triggered by me to, have a sensible discussion about anything. It doesn't matter. He's only a European. The important people are the Americans, really. And, if you can't get over you thinking, you're going to be rude to people because you think that you're better than them, and you can't talk to them if they have a different view because, you don't know how to win the argument, then you really don't deserve any space at all in any arena of political discourse. Yes, that's quite good. If the CIA rename themselves American Jesuits. No, but you see, the whole thing about Catholicism is that it is really paganism. It is Roman paganism that has attempted to modernize itself, from ancient times. We know that they refined their doctrine, they introduced new ideas, selling of indulgences, chantries, all kinds of things to extract money from their wealthier believers, and also they need to control their rebellious kings with interdicts and things like that. But, ultimately, the Roman Catholic Church cannot function outside the Roman Empire because people only understand power. And if no one supports a pope with military force, then he will have to submit to the country with military supremacy. So that explains why, the Church of England, the Catholic Church, they all submit to the liberal order, because that was the purpose of the Roman priesthood anyway. So as regards the Catholic Church, we should remember that the current Latin title of the Pope is Pontifex, and before Rome Christianized, it was Pontifex Maximus. They only just changed one word after Christianization. So now we know why the Catholic Church was so powerful, and it is, it's a mystique that, and of course its ancient lineage, because, it's really the baby of Constantine. But the point is, it has no rule of law. And then I guess I'll have to go on and on and on about the rule of law. It's not just obeying the law, it's obeying the law because it is a law, and wanting to obey the law because you trust in its source. And you are supposed to trust in God if you claim to believe in God, who revealed the Quran to humanity. So you have these ways of making these systems accountable to each other. So you won't get, somebody who says, Catholicism is exactly what I say it means. MAGA is exactly what I say it means. I don't want it codified. But, the state is me. The movement is me. I represent conservatism or liberalism or whatever, and I can say whatever it means. In fact, this is what Humpty Dumpty said in Through the Looking Glass. And most people are too stupid to, want to debate the meaning of words, which I believe is another term for metaphysics. Are we using the right word? Do we both have the correct understanding of the word, or do we at least agree on what that word means? And that leads us to idolatry, because Christians don't think they're guilty of idolatry, and Jews and Muslims, however much they hate each other, believe Christians to be guilty of idolatry, because the Trinity is the unforgivable sin of associating partners with God. And you should care about these things if you claim to believe in God. And if you don't care, we can safely assume you to be a hypocrite. Yes, Yon God, I know that recreational sex has its practitioners, both male and female. Yeah, well, the point about the 613 laws is that even the Jews admit that they can't apply all of them because there is no temple. And the thing is, they can't do it. And the thing about these Jews is that if they really believed in the afterlife, they would become Muslim, really. But they don't have to become Muslim. They just have to agree to live under Sharia and retain their identity as Jews, right? Because the Quran actually says, well, it seems to expect Jews to be around in the end time. So, but they will be in better standing with God if they lived under Sharia and supported that change of political system. I don't know what you mean, temporary backup. We didn't start the fire of what? Of regionalism. Well, I suppose the union was always fragile, right? Even if they were all white people and all these white people were Christian. And my thing is basically to demonstrate that the Civil War would not have happened under Sharia. And also to remind Britons and Americans that while God forbade a lot of things, he did not forbid slavery, and therefore you were wrong to ban it. And this means that I do support slavery. That this is just logical, right? If you have to allow slavery, then obviously you'd want it to be humane, and I think it can be made humane and labour efficient. I don't really understand what temporary backup is saying. Yes, I think the reason why Catholics are forbidden from becoming Masons is because Masonic lodges are fraternities for adherents of the Abrahamic religions. So that would be a place where Jews and Christians can be friendly towards each other, including Muslims. I know that there's been some discussion about whether Sikhs are allowed and Hindus and Buddhists, and it's like, no, of course not. You have to be a member of the Abrahamic religion. I also know that a lot of lodges are there are Mormon lodges, right, and that they're idolaters. But so are Christians, but then Christians are, a special category because they still claim to worship the Abrahamic God, even though they blend him with the body of an executed blasphemer. But the Mormon God is not the Abrahamic God because he has a wife and, other odd attributes. And, ultimately, we take idolatry seriously if we want to be serious about the Abrahamic God. And sadly, not an awful lot of them these Jews, Christians, and Muslims, they don't. So why is it important to be seen to be taking these concepts seriously? There is this saying in Buddhism, I think one of the four, it's either the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Paths, that, and it goes like this: right thought, right speech, right action. And this, I think, means that you have to be correct in theory before you can be sound in argument and finally get to implement your policy successfully. And this is really what it's all about. And if what you're proposing is not sound in theory, then everything is going to go wrong from the beginning. And Brutus is a very confused man. Obviously, his pride, won't let him, discuss ideas. Not just with me. I mean, obviously, he resents me for being female and not being white. But then, what is he? He's a Hindu. I mean, how can he be Hindu while promoting white nationalism? And how can he not understand, after all the books he's read, the indispensability of having a belief system for the group that you want to be part of? How can you not see that? But, maybe it's his, feminine emotions and his hatred and his fear and him wanting to, take a position against me, to pander to his low IQ subscribers and viewers. Maybe he's doing that because he, feels he has to take these positions. So I don't know if he'll speak to me again. Maybe he's just afraid of losing the argument, and that's the other thing. If you can't win the argument, you should lose the argument and be glad that you are not continuing on your destination to error and disaster. And if he's not man enough to see that, well, obviously I'm helpless, against his emotionalism and his pretending not to understand how things are and the indispensability of having a functioning moral system. So women find low-status men repellent. They think they might as well not exist, particularly if they don't even work. And this is really the problem. It's a vicious cycle. I know beta males feel that they're not getting respect, so they give everything up and go on the dole and claim their UBI, and they're happy with their pathetic little lives. And this is, of course, a way of, kindly getting these people to check out, right? UBI is a trap. It's saying, if you're stupid enough to accept it and spend your life playing video games and eating Cheetos, then you do deserve to become extinct. No one will marry you. You will form no desire to better yourself, and you will become extinct, and we're there to help you become extinct. So we'll see what Brutus's response is. He may decide never to speak to me again, or he just won't be able to do it, right? And then complain that stupid people who want to say disobliging things about protected minority groups should be given more attention than they actually get, even though they're just dumb bitches who apparently just sing happy birthday to Hitler and have nothing else to offer. So I think I'm better than that. It's just sad that nobody can engage with me properly in the field of ideas and arguments, and that's why I just don't bother with Europeans and Britons who are either cowardly because they refuse to engage, or just don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I think Brutus is, somewhere in between, and he doesn't quite know. But I think we could have very interesting conversations, um, but we'll see. So over to you, Brutus. The ball is in your court. I see he has just arrived. I'll keep it open in case he wants to join me. Right. Maybe I'll speak to you another time. I've been going on for about an hour. Um, I do have, other things to do anyway. So, not a problem, Brutus. I do want to say that I think it's an excellent idea of yours to just do interviews, because you are kind of providing a safe space for people to hang out for 3 hours every Sunday, but it's not really furthering the arguments. And if it's a really long stream, unless you have people, taking clips out of it, which it can do now because StreamYard, offers a special service of, generating AI clips, and I've already had my limit, and I attended a tutorial, and they said it's sort of very high energy consuming for even the AI to generate clips, and they sort of know that everybody's a TikToker really in terms of attention span. So this is the latest thing by StreamYard. And I also have to remember to cancel my subscription, because I'm now on the advanced level of StreamYard, and if I don't cancel in time, they're going to charge me $88 or something crazy like that. But yeah, have a listen. Don't get offended with anything I've said, and I think it's a great idea for you to just do interviews, because what you're doing is you're kind of being hospitable to a whole bunch of people who, as you were complaining about, were not advancing the cause, because they're not streamers. They're just happy hanging out with you. They don't want to do anything more, right? They don't want to do anything more. Well, you want to do more, and yes, of course, you have to interview people, and you might have the problem of nobody wanting to talk to you. But yeah, we'll see. I'm actually making a point of sharing all my contacts, even with people who don't like me, because it's all supposed to add to the mix of broadening the group. The group must not be an echo chamber, because if it is, it will, there will be a purity spiral, and there will also be internal conflicts as well. You want to grow the group and not have members of the group purity spiraling and stabbing each other in the front and the back. So it has to go further and wider, like those words in Rule Britannia, I think. So I think I've finished all what I wanted to say. Thank you all for coming.